Welcome to Elemental Energy, the podcast where we discuss how to simplify decarbonization. Here, we will introduce emerging low-carbon energy technologies and give you insight on how to navigate and support the evolving energy landscape. It is our goal to develop content to give you confidence to help transition the market and make low-carbon energy reliable and affordable. I'm your host, Marsha Leonard. All right.
So,
My fellow giant friend.
a hydrogen giant, Roxana Beck-Mohammadi, that's what she started calling me, was a hydrogen giant. State of hydrogen, state of the hydrogen economy, state of the union, state of the hydrogen economy. I think it's going strong. What I expected to see this year, I think, is really what's fleshing out. And there was so much hype, 19, 20, 21, money flooding into hydrogen. And then what's going to happen, and I think what we're starting to see is that just kind of starting to level set. And what was it? I heard someone from ARPA-E talking about, they're trying to pack in the last 108 years of oil and gas into a 10-year transition to hydrogen and other energy transition alternatives. And they're realizing, okay, that's probably not going to happen. We have to have more of a runway than that. I think that's what we're starting to see now. Demand is slowly starting to develop a little bit. There are still avenues that need to be pursued, and the decarbonization incentives still aren't quite there for cement, steel, other higher CO2 output entities to really start adapting hydrogen. There's still also logistics of getting the hydrogen to them, whether it's made on site or it's trucked in as a liquid, whatever it is. Those small little logistics, I think right now, are what's starting to get worked out. There are other companies also, fabricators, manufacturers, power integration companies that are starting to pivot to hydrogen. And those smaller support organizations are kind of the linchpin of getting that full hydrogen economy built out. Nothing is going to or would ever happen without them. So as they start to key in on the hydrogen economy, the transition, getting their knowledge base adapted to the needs of the hydrogen space, that's when I think you'll see more and more projects start to build up. Again, a lot of the hydrogen developers, I think they went in with the mindset that they're going to completely vertically integrate all aspects of the value chain. And I think it's not going to happen. I've been talking to several companies, like I said, fabricators, manufacturers, parts developers, companies developing the power engineering equipment of actually running a plant, and the needs that, whether it's green or blue or any other color, any kind of technology is going to need, because it's all new. And they have unique capabilities and capacities to develop this and bring that to market. And so that's what I think is we're going to see a lot of the rest of this year, is these smaller support companies really starting to get into the hydrogen space too, as you have these pilot projects, more electrolytic hydrogen projects getting started, ramped up. I think you're going to see those smaller companies, support companies, really start coming up and helping the supply chain grow.
How exciting to be one of those first movers in that supply chain to help start supporting this, because the growth that's anticipated for hydrogen and the need is only increasing. And what I have been seeing from the hydrocarbon side, the people who have been steeped in oil and gas, is it's so appealing because it's another molecule, and we know how to
Right.
deal with this molecule versus, electricity. So, how hyped I was about green hydrogen and still am hyped about green
Yeah.
hydrogen. But what I've recognized over the last few months on this journey is, realistically, how are we going to serve our natural gas customers, and how are we going to serve the people that need that decarbonization incentive on it? And You had introduced me to a really interesting technology last time we had lunch together. Photocatalysis. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah. Photocatalytic hydrogen. Yeah.
Okay.
Photocatalysis.
Let's let's
You say it enough, it rolls off the tongue.
let's break into that a bit further because from my opinion, and you being the hydrogen consultant, please correct me if I am wrong, but that seems to be one of the most appealing options right now as far as technology goes, but it's still
Uh,
so relatively new.
yeah. Well, there are a lot of really cool techs coming out. Photocatalysis is definitely one of them. Their technology is amazing. We're working with the company to implement their tech in uh, new new ways, new areas. Really cool. So I mean, basically it uses light, extremely bright light, blinds you in a second to look at it, to chemically break apart hydrogen. It's amazing. Electrical needs are minimal, especially compared to electrolysis. And it's just a very cool technology. And the company itself, it's a modular unit too. So you can make anything from a ton and a half a day to 50 tons a day, depending on what the scale and scope of the project requirements. It's a beautiful technology. Outside of that, there's also methane pyrolysis, something I've always hyped up as much as I can. And there are different methods of doing that. There's the Finland company that you and I talked about. There's another one coming out of Canada that's showing some amazing progress and really getting methane pyrolysis kind of a seat at the table for the hydrogen discussion when it comes to landed costs, operating costs, and development numbers. And there's also Monolith in the US. I think that's a great technology to start really looking at too. And the one that I've been hyped up on a lot in the last few months is geologic hydrogen. You mentioned oil and gas. I mean, that is in the wheelhouse of everything in that value chain for oil and gas, both on the EMP side, but also the mineral rights side. There's so much money that can kind of start transitioning into that hydrogen space, leveraging all of the architecture that's currently available. And I mentioned ARPA-E earlier. I think his name's Douglas Wicks at ARPA-E. They are throwing everything at geologic hydrogen to see the best ways of development. Everything from the last, like you said, 108 years of oil and gas development, fracking, horizontal drilling, everything that you've ever heard of that has been done in oil and gas, they're doing it for geologic hydrogen. And I think it's going to be a no-brainer if that hits at the scale that they are expecting it to hit. I mean, they're thinking more hydrogen subsurface than was ever imagined. So
Everyone,
there's a lot of new techs coming out.
everyone listening, I just want to remind you all of the person that we're currently talking to was somebody who helped prompt the exploration of a hydrogen along with helium to actually measure the concentrations of where this molecule might be. And he helped spur that kind of thought processing here in the United States. So that's super cool that it's advancing. Are there still focus on two different types of geological hydrogen? Because I know that some companies like Cemvita were trying to pour down this microbe to help turn oil and gas into
Yeah.
hydrogen, and that's like a very novel application. And then there's just regular geologic hydrogen that's naturally present. Are there any other types?
So Douglas Wicks mentioned three types, and then his presentation, he just kind of covered one, which is kind of the oxidation of hydrogen underground in high iron rock. There is Cemvita, which is using microbes and I think it's some kind of bacteria to change the oil and gas subsurface into hydrogen and then pulling that out. There's also in situ combustion, where you take oil and gas depleted reserves and kind of ignite it subsurface and pull hydrogen out through a filter. And there may be another one or two technologies that I'm not too familiar with, but those are kind of the big ones that I know about.
Last time you and I talked about hydrogen colors, You're
Yes.
you were talking about the carbon intensity, like needing to change
Yeah.
rainbow, and I listened to one of your podcasts. Here's another unsolicited drop for everybody listening. Paul has the number one hydrogen podcast in like almost the world. I can't remember what
It
you're
is the
talking
world. Number one hydrogen podcast in the world.
I'm so proud to know you. Thehydrogenpodcast.com. Don't worry, I'll drop it for you, Paul.
Appreciate it.
But we're talking about the carbon intensity measurements because
Yeah.
I like the rainbow because it tells me where the hydrogen was actually derived from. But in the last couple of months, having attended a hydrogen conference in UT Energy Week, which you dissed me on, no big deal,
Geez.
they were talking about carbon intensity taking hold.
Yeah.
Let's explain that. Keep going into it.
So carbon intensity really should be where everything is focused. It's all about the full life cycle carbon emissions start to finish. So, this, as a question, do we look at carbon intensity of lithium? Or do we talk about the mining, the refining, the shipping across nations? It's hard to get to that extent, and we can bring hydrogen into that conversation too. What's going on in China? What are the carbon emissions there? Those are very hard to calculate. So full life cycle carbon intensity analysis. With hydrogen, so much when you get into the colors, specifically blue and green, everyone looks at green and says, "Oh, it's unbelievably low carbon intensity," because they're not calculating the sunk cost carbon that's already gone into the grid, the renewables getting set up, the development of the electrolyzers. It's just the electrolyzers on site. We're using water. Look, it's zero carbon intensity. But right now, we need to start looking at the full life cycle, the carbon life cycle of these projects, because the argument against blue has been, we're going to start with the drilling of a natural gas well all the way through to CO2 disposal of however it's getting utilized or sequestered. So if we're going to look at that full life cycle of that molecule, we should look at the full life cycle of green as well. And then it starts to even itself out. A lot of people also placate or play down blue because it still uses methane. Right now, that methane is just getting flared, especially in the Permian. So it's not doing anyone any good. If we can take that, make hydrogen out of it, then we have a much cleaner utilization of what was once a waste product that we now have a market for. But so to answer your question, the carbon intensity is how much carbon a product has, or a hydrogen molecule has associated with it. If you're going to look at it, you have to look at the full life cycle of that molecule and how it gets developed.
Scope 3 emissions is coming to my head right now. Is like,
Yeah.
how do you really account for the entire carbon intensity footprint? I mean, that's a massive undertaking, and it seems like part of the standardization of growing this hydrogen world and putting everybody in the same page. But whoever solves that, kudos. That seems like it's going to be just too massive an undertaking for me.
Yeah, I don't imagine one brain is going to get itself around that entire problem. But I know that there are a lot of oil and gas companies that are trying to work their way through it. States and the federal government, they're also helping align with that. Our parent company, Key Hydrogen, is working alongside New Mexico to help oil and gas companies start that decarbonization process. So I say this a lot on the podcast, right? All hands on deck. Everyone has to come together to understand the full scope of these EPA rules, regulations that are coming down the pipeline. We'll be there to help set up project development. We're going to work with states, whoever else wants to work with us. We're there to help kind of navigate the regulatory, the permitting, lobbying, whatever it is. We've got contacts. We're trying to also weave our way through that. dilemma.
I'm interested to hear, what is your speculation on what the upcoming election is going to do to this progress?
Well, you think about it. When did this hydrogen hype really take off, right? It was 2018, 2019. It was before the 2020 elections. So I don't know that if there is a political shift, that there's going to be much of a change. You know, personally, I believe that utilizing hydrogen, it's not, let's say this the right way. It's not just about cleaning up pollution, carbon emissions, things like that. That's a great added benefit. But let's use hydrogen at its most capable form. It's cheapest as gasoline, natural gas, but it's not that efficient of a way to utilize hydrogen. If we can split it off and use it as itself, as its energy source, I mean, that's a huge win as far as energy independence and energy growth.
Okay. I really like how you explained the benefits of hydrogen and it not just being to clean up and decarbonize, because there is so much more that I see as well. Let's talk about further applications and offtakes, because that's been another one of the challenges we're having to overcome, is the development of the offtakers of the mass amounts of hydrogen we're trying to produce in order to incentivize those companies who want to
Yeah.
produce it. So from the last time you and I spoke, how how has it progressed in the offtake side of things?
That's a good question. It's progressed more overseas. In Europe, it's progressed a lot more as far as transportation, buses, trains, just because public transportation is so much more over there than it is here in the States. Here in the States, I think we'll see it leveraged more for hard to decarbonize industries, right? Steel, cement, things like that. Outside of that, I think we'll start seeing it in transportation eventually. But I was also talking with uh, a particular gas company. I won't mention any names, that are they're doing their own independent tests on hydrogen blending in pipelines. And everyone is so concerned about going over like 5% in these pipelines, showing embrittlement and issues with appliances. They've got an entire setup where they're running a blended line up to 20% plus, and they're not showing any embrittlement. They're not showing any damage or anything else to appliances. And the appliances that they're talking about are like, go back 80 years. So from like 80 years ago up to today, how is a blended hydrogen application look? And it's green across the board. They actually said once you get above a certain percentage, how if you use a natural gas burner, it kind of flickers a little bit. Once
Yes.
you go over a certain percentage with hydrogen, that stops. It stabilizes the flame. So as that technology continues to grow, I think we'll see more and more adopters of hydrogen because it's just so much cleaner burning. It's a much more stable molecule.
All you brilliant chemical engineer minds out there, if you can come up with some sort of poly inlay on a pipeline in order to coat to combat hydrogen embrittlement, I will be one of your first seed investors.
And I know they've got it now. They're doing it. But again, this company, this gas company, 20% no embrittlement yet.
Wow.
Of course, I
But
will
that
caveat
was a
that.
line that was made for that specific purpose, correct? It wasn't one of the
No,
old and still okay, so
no.
old steel used for
Standard
general
pipes.
natural gas transportation.
But I'll caveat it by I asked them, I said, well, was there any stagnation in your line? And they said no. So what I've heard is as long as there's turbulence in the line, it's fine. And there was constant turbulence within this pipeline. It's when the line goes stagnant and the hydrogen sits at the top that you start getting some embrittlement. So caveat that with that statement, there was no stagnation in their lines. It was all turbulent the entire time.
Now remind me too, because I know that there have been a couple of turbine generators who they've run hydrogen, full hydrogen through turbines for power
Yeah.
generation, and it works because as you just mentioned, it cleans things up. It's cleaner burning.
Right.
I don't know of any power gen facilities that are currently blending natural gas and hydrogen here in the United States. Do you know of any?
No, let's see, there's what's the project in Nevada that's starting to supply for the LA area? Can't remember the name of that project, but I think they're using Mitsubishi turbines, and those are able to go up to 100% hydrogen. I don't know if they're using it yet. There's another one I think it's under development here in Texas that's using the same Mitsubishi turbine also. They can go to 100% hydrogen. But again, I would imagine that one is strictly natural gas right now. But you
Okay.
bring up a good point, right? And you had asked about other potential, where are things going? I think we can look outside of straight hydrogen use and look at derivatives. I think that's a really easy application, whether it's synthetic jet fuel, diesel, green ammonia. I think all of those products, especially if your price point is low enough, that's an easy win. And synthetic fuels, they're more energy dense, they burn cleaner, and they're more efficient for your engines. They don't gunk up the system as much as traditional fuels. And again, that also still leverages the entire oil and gas value chain, just with a few minor tweaks.
SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, has been one of the biggest offtakes that I've seen for it in my
Yeah.
world. It makes wonderful sense that you know, the customers that we see that is making hydrogen economically viable, or if they have those derivatives in mind. So if you think about like an initial project, yes, you can use green hydrogen, renewable produced hydrogen, but as long as you have a derivative in mind, those are the projects that are making a lot of sense right now, unless they are just set up so uniquely, like if they are a renewables company who has that extra, infrastructure to where when
Yeah.
they just plug in electrolyzers, then it kind of makes more sense. But if they're coming into it a little bit green, they have to
Right.
have that kind of derivative in mind. And it's just making more sense because here in the United States, they've learned that our goal is to export not
Yes.
only the hydrogen, or excuse me, not the hydrogen, but the derivatives.
Right.
So that's where that right there is the focus for a lot of hydrogen producers, is how can they get it into the derivative of ammonia and e-methanol.
Right. And I think everyone around the globe is looking at the same thing. Australia is doing it. Oman is doing it. I think even India, several countries in Africa, they're all looking to export because, again, Europe is such a sink for all of that. They're wanting it so badly. And back to one of the things we were talking about earlier, I don't think we'll see any kind of big development here in the US until the Treasury Department gets their three pillars under control. They still haven't released their final statement on it. I think they had 30,000 letters come in complaining about it. So until those get developed, I think everyone's going to look at export because and project development too. That's probably not going to pick up for a while until those three pillars get identified and laid out. And
Admit
I've
it.
talked about it before too. I understand both sides of that issue.
Admit it. You submitted like half of those letters, didn't you? You personally
I may
had like
have.
15,000. I figured you
I
would.
can guarantee you that I have read probably about half that many.
Well, Paul, what else is there to update on because I've been hyper focused in the nuclear space for the last couple of months, just with the amazing integration applications and private funding that's opening up to the nuclear industry. A lot of oil and gas majors. I'm about
Yep.
to have somebody from Shepherd Power come on who they originated from NOV, which is a drilling
Yeah.
company. And they saw the power generation needs. And so all of these private companies are putting funding out into the advanced reactor development space, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But I have been really focused in that world that I haven't had spent enough time with the hydrogen scene within the last 3 months to talk about major advancements. What else can we cover?
I think what you're going to start seeing is data centers popping up, both for just straight computing, whether it's Bitcoin mining or just as data centers needs are growing exponentially, the need for grid sustainability is also going to increase exponentially. Also, how is that going to happen? Can we rely on renewable generation for it? Is that going to ramp up fast enough? Hydrogen is an easy solution for that problem. Whether again it's derivatives, straight hydrogen, and however that's developed, whether it's geologic, blue, green, they're the applications are out there. But I think if hydrogen as an economy can tackle the energy needs within the next 10 years as that need is going to ramp up globally, that's where we're going to start seeing the big movements. And by big movements, I'm talking, Oman putting 8 million tons a year out into the market, Saudi Arabia and the Neom City putting out that much. We're talking probably 100 million tons globally as a market, and we need to find offtake for that. Who's going to use it? Again, Europe is a big user for it. Once the U.S. gets the three pillars established, I think demand will increase. We'll see it with trucking as you see Hyzon and Nikola start moving forward with their products. And then we'll have others like Cummins, Daimler, Volvo, all entering into that market. I think that's where we'll start seeing a lot of the hydrogen specific usage. And then again, the derivative market's going to build also, especially with the cheap natural gas that we have now. And whether that's going to be through any kind of special SMR with CCUS, which is still going to be needed with enhanced oil recovery, using the CO2 for that. And then there's methane pyrolysis, both beautiful ways to really harness the energy in natural gas, methane pyrolysis giving us graphene on top of it. I
For all
think we'll
my
see. Go
Really
ahead.
quickly, for all my nuclear listeners that just kind of registered, small modular reactors,
SMR. Oh,
SMR. No,
yes.
this is steam methane reforming.
Yeah, this is steam methane reforming, not small modular reactors, which that's going to hopefully be coming down the pipe too.
Pink hydrogen.
Bring it. I
Oh,
think that's a great application for electrolyzers. I think nuclear is a much more elegant solution for electrolyzers than renewables.
I really don't know how feasible this is or how technologically sound it is, but I have this crazy idea in my head of developing a small modular reactor floating facility that when it's not powering like nearby offshore oil rigs, you can take the power, plug it into your electrolyzers, make pink hydrogen that then generates the ammonia necessary to fuel the ship. And I'm just like, and then maybe some desal on it. I don't know. I'm just, just trying to
Look at
think,
that full cycle economy.
right? I'm like, I'm not the brain behind it, but I could be like, hey, here's an idea.
Yeah, you start marketing that, and then it gets shipped to like Hawaii as they use their geothermal to power those electrolyzers there. I mean, that's a real application. They're going to look at doing that, and I covered that on a show recently after the U.S. Hydrogen Alliance's conference in D.C. They talked about it. So everyone's looking at their own unique applications for energy independence and getting everything cleaned up.
We live in such an amazing time. and we have so many bright minds who are in the energy industry right now. And I truly believe there's a space for everybody here to help support this transformation and addition that we're currently undergoing. Well,
Yeah.
Paul, you tell me if there's anything else you want to share with us, but if not, it's been so nice to have you back on Elemental Energy. And
Great to be back.
I'm so happy to see you grow too. Like I can't wait
Thank
to
you.
be
You
full-time
too. Your
hydrogen
podcast has
consultant.
really picked up.
Yeah, we'll talk downloads and the amount of downloads. And I'm just like super happy about how it's gained traction. And I'm just proud that it's making an impact. I mean, that's what matters to me. So,
You're doing great things. Keep it up.
all right. As
All right.
always, stay happy, everyone. And most importantly, stay safe. Having Paul back is always so great. What he is doing in the hydrogen space and his passion for it is just coming out in his consulting. And to have him give a bigger picture is so important. He has access to so many different subject matter experts and so many different technologies in this space, but he can deliver that full picture. And I am confident in his opinions on what is going on. So grateful you joined today. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Find me on LinkedIn, Marcia Leonard, Marcia.